Hey, this is Tom Kundert from Portugal.net and you're listening to the Seleção podcast.
Simões bending one for Torres. Eusebio. Oh my word! Have you ever seen anything like that?
Bem jogado por Simão, a passar por dois adversários, Simão a tentar oferecer o golo a Figo e a bola é golo! O golo de Figo!
Rui Costa já acreditou, vai tirar para o golo, atira, golo! 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 Cristiano Ronaldo, vai embora Cristiano Ronaldo! Bateu, golo, 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 golo! Chuta! Gol!
And we welcome you to episode number 82 of the Seleção podcast, a proud partner of Portugal.net. My name is Danny Pinto. I am your host. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Once again, whether it be via your favorite podcasting app or right here on YouTube, again, subscribe to all our outlets where you can watch and listen to the Seleção, a Seleção that is on its way to Germany as Portugal, unsurprisingly, has qualified for Euro 2024 in Germany next summer, but as untraditional of a way as we have ever seen in terms of just no real struggle for this national team, no struggle to qualify, no struggle to score goals. It's just almost like it's a weird feeling to kind of wrap things up as early as they have, not only for qualifying but then winning the group as well. But good days so far in this Roberto Martínez era. 8 wins in 8 matches, and Portugal is off to Euro 2024. We'll talk about this past international window and what it all means for Portugal with our guest, Tom Kundert of Portugal.net. We'll bring on Tom here in just a few moments. But, of course, you can follow us on Twitter, on X. I still call it Twitter. It just rolls off the tongue better. But at Seleção Pod, Facebook.com/Seleção Pod, Instagram at Seleção Pod. Selecaopod.com is the website, and you can email us, selecaopod@gmail.com. As I mentioned, listen to us, watch us. So many ways you can be part of the show. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. Make sure you subscribe there and any podcasting platforms that you might be listening to. Give us a 5-star rating if you don't mind on Google Pod, or check that Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And of course, hit the like button on this episode. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube page. Anytime a new episode is on, an alert will pop up for you if you hit that bell. So please make sure that we are your go-to for all things Portuguese national team podcasting, because I'd appreciate it. And there's the shill. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring on our good buddy, Tom Kundert of Portugal.net. As Tom?
Hello, Danny. How are you?
What's up, sir? As I mentioned just in that preamble here, this whole not struggling for qualification is such a foreign feeling for Portuguese fans in the last, I would say, 15, 20 years. 2 things. 1, welcome to the show. And 2, what is this feeling, Tom? Because it's very foreign.
You're right there, Dan. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on again. Great to speak to you about the Seleção as ever. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Portugal, it is an easy group. You have to admit that. But as we know, Danny, that really hasn't made any difference to how easy or how difficult Portugal have made it for themselves over the years, both in qualifying groups for World Cups and Euros and in the actual tournaments themselves. It kind of seems quite often, isn't it, that the easier the group is, the more difficult Portugal make it for themselves. So like you say, that's absolutely spot on. It's a very kind of novel feeling, this. the fact that Portugal have just smashed it. Like you said, 8 wins out of 8. Despite I'm sure we'll come on to talk about it, despite the fact we do have to kind of, hold our hands up and say, yes, this isn't the most, this isn't the strongest opposition Portugal are facing. Even so, it's just such a nice change, isn't it, to put these teams to the sword, like you say, scoring goal after goal. It's great. It's difficult not to get excited about this team.
Yeah, just some stats here for our listeners and our viewers here. So Portugal, 8 wins on 8 matches in qualifying. In terms of overall European qualification, the 8 wins is the most so far in all of European competition for 2024. No other team has more than 6. The Portuguese output in terms of goals, 32. The next closest country is Switzerland with 20. So we have a plus 12 on everybody else at the very least. And then in terms of conceding, only France has given up less goals. They've only given up 1 during qualifying. Portugal gave up the 2, just as the first 2 of the campaign against Slovakia in the first match of this window. So it seems that, and again, I would call it still early days. And again, qualification should have never been a question, considering the talent on the team. But I would say early days, Tom. It seems that Roberto Martínez has unlocked and released the horses on the offensive side of things that we have been asking for the last few years, especially with the abundance of attacking players that are plying their trade in the top leagues in Europe. What have you thought of Roberto Martinez's tenure thus far, and how he is at this point has unlocked this team on the offensive end, and we're seeing offensive football like we have never seen from a Portuguese team in quite some time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we talk about our attacking talent. We've talked about it for years, haven't we? Ronaldo, of course, and Ronaldo perhaps now is not our most potent weapon. But when you've got the likes of, Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, Joao Felix, even Joao Cancelo, these really just world-class players, undoubtedly world-class players, and that's why they're playing for the best teams in the world. We've all been saying, why can't Portugal harness this talent? Why can't they play like a kind of dominant attacking team that's a real danger to the opposition? And finally, they're doing it. And I think, we've spoken about this a lot, haven't we, Danny, since Roberto Martínez was appointed Portugal coach. It was a surprise. I think it took everyone by surprise. And, but, you have to say, I really like what he's done so far. Above all else, I like his flexibility because, not to go up over the whole Fernando Santos, era again, but I think there was a lot of things to like about Fernando Santos, and I think he, some of the criticism I thought was a bit harsh on him, but there's one thing which he was, I think, poor at, and that Roberto Martínez has so far proved to be the exact opposite, which is his tactical flexibility. Roberto Martínez has tried a lot of different tactics already, again, made easier by the fact that this, he can kind of test things out. And even if it doesn't work out, it's probably not going to have too disastrous an effect, given the fact that the opposition isn't the strongest. But he's tried out a lot of things. I mean, we were all talking for a lot about the 3 at the back for ages. Portugal with such brilliant wing backs, Cancelo, especially Nuno Mendes. Fortunately, of course, has been injured for most of this campaign. But with 2, flying fullbacks like that, you would have thought it was obvious to try 3 at the back to kind of just release them. But he did that the first few games. To be perfectly honest, I don't think it really worked very well. If we have a look at this campaign so far, I think the first 4 games or so were probably Portugal's least impressive. In terms of, the way they dominated the opponents. And so he's changed it again, he went back to 4 at the back, but he's tried the quite interesting thing of having Joao Cancelo moving into a kind of infield, almost making like an extra midfielder, a la Guardiola. I suppose he kind of started that. But that's worked very well for Portugal so far. He's been very effective there. He's tried 2 up front, Ronaldo and Gonçalo Ramos. I'm sure we'll talk about that. I thought that worked really well. I thought it was Ronaldo's best game, the game, not this last one against Bosnia, but the game against Slovakia. That was the first game, I'd say, really, that convinced me that I think Ronaldo can really still be very useful to Portugal. Well, obviously I knew that he could be useful, but I think he kind of justified even why he started. He was really good in that game. And then the game against Bosnia, I thought it was quite strange after that. It worked so well that he went again to 1 up front with Ronaldo, Joao Felix, just playing a little bit behind him instead of alongside him. And again, you have to say that worked well again, didn't it? So, these different tactical setups, little nuances, but just the fact above all that he's trying things out, trying different things, is being flexible. Portugal have got such outstanding players, such intelligent players as well. When you're talking about the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva, he talks about this a lot himself. Martinez, they're really intelligent players. You can ask them to do certain different things and they understand straight away and they do it. So, that all goes well for the future.
Tactical flexibility, I think, was one of the main things that he had mentioned in his introductory press conference when he was announced. And it's been nice to see that kind of come to fruition because, it's, you always hear a manager say one thing and then sometimes it just goes the opposite way. But he's been true to his word from the get-go, Tom, and you mentioned Joao Cancelo. I mean, having him on the left side and having Diogo Dalot on the right has proven to be a nice combination for this Seleção, while the traditional left back has been an issue with injury with Nuno Mendes and Rafael Guerreiro, where we can't get a consistent left back, I guess, option. Traditional, I should say. But yeah, the flexibility that he's shown, and again, it does have a lot to do, I think, with the fact that one, he's a new manager. He wants to know exactly what he has, what works best for his system, whatever that system is. But I have just liked the fact that it has not been the same every time, that he has that he's very open to the experimentation of, 3 in the back. We're going to have 4 now. We'll play a diamond. We'll play 2 up front, like you mentioned with Ramos and Cristiano Ronaldo in the Slovakia game. But to me, it's just a very it's a breath of fresh air, to be very honest with you. Because again, I'm not going to beat the Fernandes horse. I think that time has now passed. But it is just nice to see that going into a match, we are almost kind of guessing now what's the tactic going to be, and it's not and we're not guessing in a negative way. We're guessing like, okay, what does Roberto Martínez now have up his sleeve this go around?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. Again, we don't want to talk too much about Santos, but I think possibly one of his main criticisms was that Portugal became very predictable, basically, under him. He always.
I think that's a good way of saying it. The predictability, yeah.
Yeah, and now they're very unpredictable. Like you said, so unpredictable that it's difficult for us to know, who will make the starting 11. I mean, this last game, I think was a perfect example for that. Bernardo Silva started on the bench. No one would expect that normally. Who came in for him? Otávio, arguably the player of the match. Superb. He really gives Portugal good balance, Otávio. So this just opens up another option, I suppose. And of course, if we're guessing, if the Portugal fans are guessing, and even the commentators and the analysts on TV, they're kind of everyone seems to have their own 11, and they're not the same. Then you can imagine what it's like for the opposition. It's the
Absolutely.
Same thing. Yeah, and that makes, that in theory, should make Portugal a much more tougher opposition. As long as, of course, he chooses the right formation for the right opponent. That should make Portugal much more difficult to prepare to play against than under Santos, where, although we had these great players and let's be fair to Santos, sometimes his tactics worked. Euro 2016, he still is the only manager to ever, deliver the major trophy for Portugal in one of these big tournaments. And he just did that using, a resolute defence, basically. And it worked on that occasion. That may work on occasion for Portugal in the future, but it won't work, I don't think, if that's the only tactic Portugal use, because it's much more easy to prepare for. So yeah, it's great, having these. We all know we've got an abundance of talent. We've got a lot of different options. And it seems so far that Martinez is being true to his word. You're exactly right. So often managers come out and say this and that, and then it just doesn't translate, does it, to what they actually do? But yeah, he's been true to his word. He's really mixed it up. He's really, tried a lot of options. I think in some ways, I hope it doesn't become a problem that there's just so many options, that Portugal perhaps don't settle on an 11, which of course is another thing which you really should try to aim to do going into a big tournament, to have more or less your strongest 11 defined, so so you can work on it and get stronger and get everything completely fine-tuned ahead of the big tournament. But yeah, we're in a good place at the moment, Danny.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking with Tom Kundert here of Portugal.net on episode number 82 of the Seleção podcast. I'm your host, Danny Pinto. Tom, have you ever eaten crow?
Yes, plenty of times.
All right, 'cause I'm gonna eat a little bit of proverbial crow here. Let's see if I can, for you YouTube watchers here. This crow is my mother made this crow. It's a bundt cake, but I'm gonna go ahead and take a little bite here. And so let me go ahead and say this. I was very harsh, I guess, on the last podcast regarding and this is going to be really, really gross for those of you listening, because you're going to be, hearing now me chewing a little bit. But I had a very strong opinion of Cristiano Ronaldo, and it maybe being the, we might be needing to look at a Seleção without him. And I got a lot of response to it. I'm not saying I was wrong. I still think we have to go ahead and start, realizing that this Seleção will be without him at some point. And, it's going to, it has worked without him. Small sample size. But I'd be a fool to not recognize that this international window, specifically these two matches, I thought he was playing the most relaxed and most in form. And I would say not bought in, because I think he's always bought in. But I just think that this has been the offense flowed the best with him in the lineup for the first time in a very, very long time. And if this is the kind of Cristiano Ronaldo that we're gonna hopefully get here next summer, sky's the limit for this team. And I think the sky's the limit for this team no matter what, to be truthful here. But Tom, I thought that his performance, especially against Slovakia and even against Bosnia and Herzegovina, but these two matches to me proved to me and showed me, quite frankly, that he can be still an effective part of this team, because I didn't feel like the ball was forced to him at all. These two matches, I still think that the offense flowed really, really well, and it's something that just has not happened in matches past. Where, I mean, for God's sakes, he scored now 127 international goals. Of course, he's going to be the focal point when he's the all-time international scorer. But I just thought for me, this was the most comfortable and the best version of Cristiano Ronaldo that we've seen wearing a Seleção shirt in quite some time. What say you as I finish my crow?
Yeah, well, first of all, don't be too harsh on yourself, because I think it's completely fair to question Cristiano Ronaldo. Of course, it's a very emotive subject, isn't it? This is the guy who's the best Portuguese footballer of all time, has given us so much joy over so many years. It's almost like sacrilege to a lot of Portuguese people, a lot of Portuguese football fans, a lot of Cristiano Ronaldo fans, to even question whether or not he should be a starter. But I think it's a fair question. Like I said, the game, I think especially against Slovakia, I was really encouraged by Ronaldo's performance. That doesn't mean necessarily that I think he should start always, every game, or will Portugal's strongest lineup be a Cristiano Ronaldo in it. I'm not 100% convinced by that yet, but I think what it did show us is that he does have a role, and he can, Portugal can be a very exciting, dynamic team with Cristiano Ronaldo in it. What impressed me most about the game against Slovakia was the way he combined with the rest of the teams. You said it exactly right there, Danny. He wasn't forced, things weren't forced towards Ronaldo, which has been, let's face it, that has been a problem with Portugal for years, really. He's been so much, so many steps ahead, so many levels ahead of every player, every Portuguese player, just about every player in the world. It was kind of obvious that it happened, but this did often have a detrimental effect on the team, because you could tell everything was kind of channeled towards him, when sometimes that obviously it's not the best decision. And I think it also helps that you have players like Bruno Fernandes and even João Felix to a certain extent, but especially Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva, who are absolute worldwide stars in their own right, players who feel confident enough to, for example, take on a shot instead of passing to Cristiano Ronaldo. But yeah, going back to the actual Ronaldo, that performance against Slovakia, what really impressed me was the way he linked up, quick passing, intelligent pass. People often forget about Ronaldo. And this is one of his attributes, which I think he won't lose with age, is a fantastic passer of the ball, and he's got great vision. I think there's a stat, I think I'm not wrong in saying that he's the record holder. He's got so many records, hasn't he? But one of the interesting records, which often gets overlooked, I think he has the most assists, Champions League assists, than any other player, I think. Not 100% sure on that, I should check that. But, he's got an amazing amount of assists. And obviously, he's not as fast as he was. He's not going to sprint most international defenders, especially when we play against the top teams. He's not as skillful as he once was. He's not as clinical as he once was. So, but he does have other attributes, and the way he linked up with Ramos on Friday night was just with Ramos and the rest of them, that right-hand side with Bernardo Silva and Ramos, and also Bruno Fernandes drifting to that side. It just, linked up so well. Some really good passing, some really good effective moves, just slicing open that Slovakia defence. I actually think that first 45 minutes against Slovakia was one of the best I've seen Portugal play for years. I suppose we had the Switzerland game, didn't we, in the World Cup? But if we take that one, they just absolutely ripped apart Slovakia, who are the second best team in this group, and not a terrible team, not a very weak team. And so, that was just really encouraging seeing that. Yeah, and I agree with you, absolutely. Ronaldo, I think, proved, no, maybe not definitively that he should be a starter, although, of course, it's going to be difficult for him not to start, I think. But he did prove that he can really be an asset to this team and not a hindrance.
Yep, 9 goals in 7 matches during qualifying in this campaign, and yes, Tom, you are correct. He is the all-time leader in assists as well as goals in Champions League history, topping Messi in both of those categories. But yeah,
it's amazing, isn't it? That's one thing which is sometimes people overlook. But he's a really good passer in that he's got good vision. He's his quick thinking like that is creative in his passing. I suppose a lot of those came, in his younger days as well, when he played a little bit more as a winger and getting those crosses in. But yeah, like I say, that's one asset to his game, which you see it often, don't you, with number 10s, kind of Rolls Royce midfielders, isn't it? They can go on until late 30s because they play with their head more
Absolutely.
than with their body. And so, yeah, that's one thing which, I think Portugal can really take advantage of.
And it's and two different kinds of players here, but I enjoyed watching Luis Figo at the end of his Seleção time, just being, he would score goals, but I just thought his creativity when he was in the middle of the pitch and being able to distribute more. And Ronaldo, not that Ronaldo's going to be doing that by any means, but to your point, the capability is there, and we kind of saw it a little bit in these two matches where it wasn't always straight to the goal. It was and even in the window, the international window before, you could see that it's he, I think, understands maybe a little bit more, probably more than anyone, Tom, that he is not going to be the one that's going to take on a defender now one-on-one or even two defenders on like he used to. But the quality can still be on display just in different ways. And I thought, again, and I think we're both in agreement here, that these last two matches were his best in a Seleção shirt overall in a long time.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. Before the World, better than I think we have to go to before the World Cup to find a similar kind of level of performance.
When I had Albert and Barney of the Long Ball Football podcast on, the comparison that they gave in terms of how Roberto Martínez is using Bruno Fernandes it was Kevin De Bruyne, and I thought De Bruyne, obviously playing in Pep's system at Man City, obviously when he's on the field he is unbelievable, and I think Kevin De Bruyne is one of the most still underrated players in all of world football. He just can't stay on the field long enough to, because of health and fitness and everything. But we look at Bruno Fernandes under Roberto Martínez, 5 goals, 8 assists. He leads the European qualifying competition with 8 assists there. I mentioned the word unlocked when it comes to this offense under Roberto Martínez. And I think the focal point there in that unlocking has been Bruno Fernandes. You have always been a huge fan of Bruno Fernandes since his days in Sporting, but it's so nice to see the emergence of Bruno Fernandes on this national team, not so much as the heir apparent to take over for Cristiano Ronaldo once Ronaldo hangs up his cleats, but it's just he is now a consistent focal point, I would say, to this offense, especially during this campaign. What have been your thoughts on Bruno Fernandes under Roberto Martínez?
Yeah, I think that's the good word to use there, Danny. Consistent, because like you say, I'm a massive fan of Bruno Fernandes. I think he's the best player I've ever seen at Sporting in 25, 26 years of watching them live. Just an incredible player, an absolute genius on the ball. But it's fair to say that for Portugal, he didn't replicate that form, most of the time when he played for Portugal. I think he's got 50 or 60 caps, isn't it? And probably the first half of that at least. He really wasn't playing that well, wasn't playing to the same level as his club football. I think he has improved a lot even before Martínez. He had a good game. I remember World Cup playoff against North Macedonia. He was probably the best player in that game. In the actual World Cup itself, I thought he was possibly one of Portugal's best players. But there's no doubt he's taken that even to the next level, and that we are now seeing at international level for the Seleção. We are seeing Bruno Fernandes do what he does at his club side. It's no coincidence that his captain of Manchester United now is really been fantastic ever since he's been there. And you could say the one shining light through all that club has had so many troubles, hasn't it? But it's, but he himself, his performance level has always been excellent. And since Roberto Martinez has taken over, it's interesting, isn't it? Because most people would have, I think, expected Bernardo Silva perhaps to be the next, I suppose you can say, golden boy of Portuguese football, and perhaps the kind of heir apparent to Portugal's biggest star after, Ronaldo. Not quite the player he was, but you have to say Bruno Fernandes has taken on that mantle, and he has just been unbelievable. He has been unbelievable this campaign. He's been, every game is just producing those trademark assists. The first assist for the goal, for the Gonçalo Ramos goal against Slovakia, it was just absolutely outstanding. The way he takes out that defender with a clever shimmy with his left foot, almost like a Cruyff turn, and then just takes one look up, pops it onto Ramos's head, perfect cross, and he's just doing that time and time again, like you say, assisting, scoring goals for fun, playing slightly different roles. It was interesting, he's slightly more central against Slovakia. Against Bosnia, he was a little bit more on the right, quite often right on the touchline. But he just, like Martinez says, he loves Fernandes just because he said he's, again, such an intelligent footballer, and he listens to what the instructions of the coach are, and he carries them out to the letter. And so, it's just a joy to watch at the moment. Absolutely superb. Yep. Can't hear you, Dan. Hello.
See, Tom, you gotta unmute yourself. When you mute yourself after you. And by the way, for those wondering, the crow was delicious. But to echo what you were saying about Bruno Fernandes, especially in the latter part here of his national team career, the last 22 matches, which includes pretty much every game since Euro 2020/2021, 22 games, 10 goals, 12 assists. That's through World Cup qualifying, the World Cup, and obviously European qualifying. So it had been coming based on those numbers, obviously under Fernandes, but it has been in abundance here for Roberto Martinez, and it's been great to see him being a focal point that we all hoped he would be when he first came on the Seleção scene. We are talking with Tom Kundert here of Portugal.net on episode number 82 of the Seleção podcast. Portugal obviously has qualified for Euro 2024. They did so with 3 games to spare in qualifying. They won the group with 2 games to spare. 2 final matches in qualifying in the qualifying campaign next month in November. Tom, I guess I'll ask what would you do, and then what you think Roberto Martinez will do. But we talked about his flexibility, and we've talked about him, playing 3 in the back, then 4 in the back. We've talked about having 2 strikers, 1 striker, mixing up a little bit in the midfield. He's done that out of necessity, I think, just to simply figure out what he has in terms of the quality of players and how they mesh into what he wants to do. But, and I think you mentioned it, we don't have a consistent starting 11. That has been something that, if it doesn't work, could be a detriment instead of something that we're praising because of the roster flexibility and the tactical flexibility that he's provided this national team. But I guess for me, and to get your opinion here, what do you think he should do with these last 2 matches? And not knowing Tom, it looks like we're actually going to get friendlies leading up to Euro 2024, because I don't believe there's any. I think I did. I checked before the show here. There's no Nations League qualifiers. There's no other qualifier. We're going to have a traditional international friendly window, probably a couple here, and then a few games leading up to the tournament. But What would you like to see Roberto Martínez do in these last 2 games since everything is kind of wrapped up? And what do you think he will do?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, isn't it? Because you're right. It seems to be perfect time for experimentation now. But we've got these 2 matches, and then there are a few friendlies, but not many. I think there's only maybe 1, 2 international windows before the Euros, and then right before the tournament, they probably only play a maximum of 1 serious game. I'd expect them. So we're probably talking about 5, 6 games before the actual tournament, and so what does he do? That's a really good question. On the one hand, he's already shown a lot of flexibility, a lot of different things he can do with this squad. And so, does he kind of try and, I suppose you could say, consolidate 2 or 3 systems, to say, okay, if we choose this model of play, if we choose this system, this tactics, this formation, okay, let's make sure we all know exactly what we're going to do and just, choose more or less the same personnel? Or does he give other players a chance? I think he will bring in a few other players, because we also have to, of course, take into account that there could be injuries. Players could, touch wood. It won't happen, but imagine if there's 3 or 4 injuries. We see it so often, don't we? Before big tournaments, these are all top players playing for top teams, and so they're all going to have 50, 60 matches. Some of them will be going to the Champions League, really deep into that tournament. So hopefully it won't, it won't result in injuries, but it could do. And so you have to have players who are ready to step in. That said, I think this last squad, so he actually chose 26 players, but then 2 of them had to drop out, Ricardo Horta and Rafael Guerreiro, because of injury. And so I would expect of this squad, he almost certainly would choose maybe a core of 17, 18 players. I don't think he'll definitely call them up. It doesn't matter what games they're for, even if they're for friendlies. And maybe give 1 or 2 other players a chance who kind of knocking on the door and, who, if an injury occurs, might be able to step in. So players like, for instance, Bruma, I think is just having a fantastic season for Braga. We all know what a great talent he is, and he hasn't really harnessed it in his career, such a journeyman career, but now he seems to be really playing consistently well. I'd like to see him have a chance. A lot of people here in Portugal, a lot of the local pundits are talking about Galeno as well. Porto's Galeno, who is now eligible, Brazilian-born, of course, but eligible to play for Portugal. Some people think he should be given a chance. 1 or 2 players like that. I don't think, like I said, I don't think there's an awful lot. I think it's more a question of experimenting and consolidating systems, formations, whatever you want to call them, models of play, rather than mixing the players up so much. And so it's kind of long-winded answer to your question. We're saying I don't think there will be a huge amount of experimentation, but yeah, I think he will use these qualifiers and then the friendlies, just to try and work towards 1 or 2 main systems that he can use in a tournament.
Well, do you make anything of the fact that the previous international window, 24 players were called up, this one 26, and all 24 from the previous window were called up, and then the 2 additional players were João Neves of Benfica and then Rafael Guerreiro, who ended up not being able to play due to injury anyway. But does that give you any kind of window, you think, of where his mind is in terms of just maybe the current available crop of players? Like if it seems to me that he would be comfortable with that group if the tournament started tomorrow, for instance. But do you make anything of that?
Oh yeah, for sure. He's already got his core squad, hasn't he? He's got. I said 17 or 18. It's probably more. It's probably about 20 players there, which, barring injury, would definitely go to Euro. 2024. No real changes. Of course, people You know, they see Bruno scoring these fantastic goals. They see, they see Galeno, Anderson Galeno having a great season for Porto. Maybe they see, again, hopefully, Mateus Nunes starting to, turn it on for Manchester City, or hopefully as well Sanchez, getting back to what he can do, and Renato Sanchez, and, players of that quality, if they hit top form and if they're playing consistently for their teams, you've got to say they're in with a shout. But it's easy enough looking at these players and saying, yeah, what a player, he should go. But who do you take out? That's the
right.
problem.
Yeah.
Who do you take out? You look at that squad now. Does anyone in that squad who you think doesn't deserve to be there? Maybe Ruben Neves, I would say, perhaps is the one which is.
Take it easy, Tom. My God.
But
what did Ruben
really
Neves do to you?
Well, I'm just looking at the squad, Danny.
I'm kidding.
I'm looking at the squad now, and I really can't see anyone who you can, you're not going to take out. Okay, forget the keepers for a while. You're not going to take out Dalot. He's been great. Semedo, okay. Possibly
there it is. Yeah, there's one.
But then if Nuno Mendes gets back to full fitness, I think there's no doubt he'll be in the squad. Cancelo, no, you're not taking him out. Danilo, he's been very good again. You're not taking him out. Antonio Silva, Gonzalo Inacio. Isn't it great, Danny? We remember our discussions for years and years about the problem Portugal were going to have at centre back, and our lack of
the podcast was built on that discussion.
And our lack of possibilities. Now we've got Ruben Dias already consolidated himself, one of the best centre backs in the world, and we've got Antonio Silva and Gonzalo Inacio. Both of them really, really, outstanding prospects, been really good whenever they've been called up. Totti Gomez, I think, but with all due respect, I think, if Pep comes back, I'd be very surprised if he's still in the squad. Going on to midfielders, Palhinha, he's going for sure. Bruno Fernandes, Otavio, Vitinha, Bernardo Silva, you're not dropping any of those. Ricardo Horta is a player I really appreciate, and he's hardly had a kick, because it's just so hard to get into the squad. Leão, there's no way he's not going. Joao Felix, Cristiano Ronaldo, Gonçalo Ramos, Diogo Jota, Pedro Neto. Who do you drop? You can't. And that was a 26-man squad, was it? It's just so. It's people can say, oh, this player and this player. It's a disgrace that this player and this player isn't in the squad, but you have to remember, there are only possibly, I've heard a bit of talk about this. If you remember, Danny, the last World Cup, they increased the squad to 26 players. And I think the previous Euro also because of COVID. So far, it seems that they're going to go back to the traditional 23-man squad.
Okay.
So if that is the case, then, there's going to be one or two very high profile players who unfortunately just won't be able to make it.
So you think Ronaldo's making the team, huh?
I think he might just squeeze in there. Yeah.
That's breaking news, guys. I'll see if I can put that on the ticker on the bottom here. Tom, I couldn't keep you anymore without asking you your thoughts on now the official 2020 or 2030 World Cup that will be played not only in Spain, not only in Morocco for some reason. But obviously in Portugal, as someone who has dedicated himself to Portuguese football for so many years, it's not just a Portugal hosting situation. It is being hosted in 3 different countries, but it's a World Cup nonetheless. What are your thoughts? I guess as a fan, and then what are your thoughts on just maybe the logistical aspects of what could be in 2030?
Yeah, well, just as a fan, and from a purely selfish point of view, I'm absolutely delighted. Of course, the World Cup on my doorstep. Wow, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be great. I know there's been quite a lot of talk about, this is FIFA messing things up as usual, but I'm not actually too critical of this decision to hold it in 3 countries. I guess
technically 6, because
Yeah,
the whole thing starts in
That's true.
Argentina, Uruguay, and I think is it
Peru,
Paraguay?
I think.
Or
Is it? Oh,
Peru?
Paraguay.
No, Paraguay, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Paraguay. Yeah. That's a little bit strange, but that's kind of just for almost sentimental reasons, isn't it? It's
Sure.
Like the 100 centimeter, and there's only one match each in those countries. So yeah, it's a bit strange, but okay, that's what they've decided. I think the three, I mean, Spain and Portugal, and let's be fair, Morocco, they showed in the last World Cup, don't they? I think all of these countries, they've got a huge football, culture, huge football culture.
True.
And there'll be so much excitement, I think, in each country. And of course, again, just from a selfish point of view, it would have been nice just Portugal and Spain, because then Portugal would have had more matches.
Absolutely.
But I suppose, these are so big now, aren't they? These tournaments, 48 teams it's going to be. It's quite, I suppose, feasible to spread it around a bit. And Morocco, I guess they would have had a hard time ever, organising it by themselves, just like Portugal, to be fair. Portugal and Spain, I think they could have done a good job, but okay, Morocco are in. That will mean Portugal has less matches, but of course they play their group matches here. I'm pretty sure about that. Well, they definitely do that, don't they? The host country always gets their own group matches, and maybe I'm pretty sure the final will be in Spain, the inauguration match. I'm not sure. That might even not be in Portugal, but Portugal will get plenty of group games and maybe one semi-final as well, a quarter-final. So yeah, really, really excited about it. Good decision, I'd say, this time by FIFA.
Yeah, I as someone who lives here in the United States, and then obviously with ties to my Portuguese culture, these next two World Cups are going to be absolutely unbelievable, and hopefully I can find my way to both. And again, Tom, a casa está às ordens if you want to come over in
there we go, and the same for you as well. So 2026, I'm at your place, and then 4 years later you come over to Lisboa.
Yeah, you and Matthew have to take me to all the hot spots where you guys have sardinhas and beer. I mean, I'm all in on that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tom, I appreciate your time as always, sir. Thank you so much for joining us here on episode number 82 of the Seleção podcast. I can't wait to see what Roberto Martínez and his national team does with these last two qualifiers, and what the winter and spring of 2024 bring us here as we prepare for Euro 2024 in Germany. But all the best to you, sir, and can't wait to have you back.
Yeah, great, Danny. Thanks. Always good talking to you. And yeah, good. I think your fantastic podcast is going to get more and more fans, because Portugal, I think they're going places, and you're going to be right on top of it for sure.
I'll do my best. I will do my best. All the best, Tom. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
And our thanks to Tom Kundert of Portugal.net. Remember, you can follow Tom on Twitter at Portugal1. That's PORTUGOAL and the number 1. Make sure you bookmark Portugal.net for everything that comes from Tom's site. Just an abundance of information, great contributors. I am one of those contributors. Wouldn't call myself great, but I'm just I'm very humbled by Tom's inclusion of this podcast on his site, and look forward to many more episodes to be shared on Portugal.net as we lead up to 2024. So that will do it for episode number 82 of the Seleção podcast. Before I leave this podcast here, I just wanted to mention, I put it on Twitter, on X, that there wouldn't be a preview episode due to some family obligations. And I don't know why I feel like I have to tell you guys why there isn't an episode, but why there will be an episode. But I just feel a connection with you guys, and I hope that what I say resonates with you guys. And So as you guys know, or if you don't, my family and I went to the Azores in July. And we spent 4 weeks in the Azores. We have gone now the last 2 summers to the Azores. We've been privileged enough to be able to do that. My parents, or excuse me, my wife's parents, moved back to the island of Pico, where they are originally from. They did so last March of 2022. We were able to visit them last summer, and then we were lucky enough to be able to do that again this summer. And the reason for the I guess the no episode here was we had gotten some news a few weeks back that my father-in-law had not been doing very well, and he unfortunately has passed. He passed on October the 9th, and being in the States and not being able to be there, especially my wife not being able to be there, as I told you guys too, like she broke her ankle coming a week before we left from our vacation in the Azores, and for her not to be there with her family was very, very hard and very just very sad. My wife is one of the best people I've ever met in my life, and seeing her in the pain that she is still in, because it's still very fresh, and it was something that it was just very hard, and we as a family have been trying to lean on each other during this very difficult time. But what I do believe in is I believe in signs, and I believe in I don't know if it's fate, but I will say this. So we had a mass in his honor. João Machado was my father-in-law, a man who I love very, very much. Took me in as one of his own, and he already had 6 kids, and already had some daughters-in-law. So I was one of even a bigger group now. But he always took me in, and took me in right away, and I loved him for that. But we had a mass here in the States, in California, in his honor, because we couldn't be there for the funeral the next day. And the mass was on October the 13th, a date that is obviously very symbolic and in the history of Portuguese history with Fatima. And it's also my youngest son, Lucas's birthday. And, timing of that just couldn't be helped. We wanted to make sure that we had a mass prior to the funeral, which was the next day, October the 14th. On October the 14th, my other son, Eliseo, had a soccer game. And normally plays as a defender. And I am an assistant coach on his team. Our head coach decided to put Eliseo up front and play forward. I would say midway through the second half, we were down 2-1, and I then had to take Lucas, my youngest, to his soccer game, as I am the head coach of his team. So I'm very involved with my kids with soccer. And as I mentioned, October the 14th, which was the day after the mass that we had for him, for my father-in-law here, October the 14th in Peak was the funeral, was the burial of my father-in-law. And as I'm taking my son Lucas to the car to go to his game, I put him in the car. I strap his seatbelt in. I just happened to take a look back to the field to see, how the game is going. And again, we're down 2-1. And as I look back, there's a ball that is being crossed into the box. And wouldn't you know it, my son Eliseo gets a foot on that ball, scores the goal, his first goal of the season, and the whole crowd goes absolutely crazy. the whole crowd at a under 9 soccer game. So, the, the 15, 20 people that were there. And I leave the car. The car wasn't running, so I didn't leave my child in the car. I didn't close Lucas in the car. But I run like halfway to where my car was and the field was, and I'm pumping my arms and I'm going, yeah, Eliseo. And I get back in the car. I call my wife, who was not able to go to the game. She wanted to be home during the service. And I told her that Eliseo had scored a goal. And as I was saying it, I realized, who may have helped him do it. And that wasn't lost on me. It wasn't lost on my wife. And I had tears in my eyes as I was driving to Lucas's game, knowing that while my father-in-law was gone physically, he may have had something to do with what happened on the field at his grandson's soccer game. Call me sappy, call me whatever it is, but I firmly believe that there was some, for lack of a better term, some divine intervention with Eliseo's goal that day, given everything that had been going on with our family. So, all that to say is that, I think that what this show can sometimes be too, not only for, it's for Seleção fans, and it's for Portugal fans, it's for soccer fans. If you're a fan of me, hey, I appreciate it. But I guess like what we found sometimes during the days during after my father-in-law had passed, and during the times that he was sick, because he was sick for a few weeks prior to, was that you sometimes you just need an outlet to kind of just get away from the hardships that life can sometimes bring you. And if I can be no. If this podcast can be a distraction, a diversion from any kind of hardship that you guys are going through, listen. I hope that I can, with this show, that it can be some sort of diversion if you're going through something. If you just need a break from work, if you need a break from your personal life, if you need a break from anything, if this show can be an outlet for you to just kind of unwind and get some time just for yourself for about an hour or so, we're here for it. So, to my father-in-law, João Machado, dedicate this episode to you. Thank you for everything you did for me. Thank you for the sacrifice and the journey from Peak to the States to allow your beautiful daughter to get the medical attention that she always needed. And that's something that, my wife has dealt with medical issues her entire life. Thank you for allowing her to be a part of my life, and us to be able to raise 2 wonderful boys. And I'll never forget you. Those boys will never forget you. And we're indebted to the sacrifice and the sacrifice that you made for Suzette and her brothers. And I'm indebted to what you've done for me, and especially for my 2 boys. So, Sr. João, até a gente se vê outra vez, e paz a tua alma, meu amigo. All right. So no easy transition to get out of here, but this is and has been episode number 82 of the Seleção podcast. I have been your host, Danny Pinto. We look forward to catching you guys on the next episode of the Seleção podcast, and it'll be interesting to see what Roberto Martínez does, as we talked with Tom Kundert about it, what he does with these last 2 qualifiers now that Portugal has not only wrapped up qualification for the European Championship next summer, but has won the group as well. So we'll have all that for you guys next month. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you follow us on Twitter and on X at Seleção Pod. I almost said at Portugal.net. At Seleção Pod on X on Twitter, at Seleção Pod on Instagram. Facebook.com/SeleçãoPod. You can email the show, selecaopod@gmail.com. And, of course, bookmark our website, selecaopod.com. Again, make sure you are subscribing to us on all of the podcasting platforms that are available to you. Make sure, if you can, leave us a 5-star rating on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you want to leave a comment on Apple Podcasts, we'd appreciate that as well. And make sure you hit the subscribe button and the alert button on YouTube. On our YouTube page, just search the Seleção Podcast. I've been your host, Danny Pinto, of episode number 82 of the Seleção Podcast, a proud partner of Portugal.net. And as always, Força Portugal!